Welcome to today's lesson. Today we're looking at inversion. Now, maybe you're thinking, what's inversion? Don't worry, you've seen it before because we use inversion every time we make a question in English. Because we're going to first look at subject auxiliary inversion, and this means that instead of saying I am, you say am I. So, am I an Englishman? Yes, I am. So we use inversion when we make a question. Am I an Englishman is a question. Are you sure? We don't say you are sure. Are you sure? Do you know? Or something like that. Did he go? All of these sentences, the do, the did, the have, the are, and all modal verbs as well, will, would, should, could, can, may, might, must, they are inverted in questions. The subject and the auxiliary verb, and I mean modal verbs are auxiliary verbs, and but just to make it clear, modal or an auxiliary, because modal verbs are a form of auxiliary verbs. Now in questions we invert the auxiliary verb and the subject, but also in question tags. So you don't know him, do you? So question tags are another situation when we invert the auxiliary verb and the subject. And also echo questions. If somebody says, I would like a cup of tea, would you? Yeah, that echo question when there are two people speaking. Now, if you want to brush up on your skills concerning questions, please watch my video on auxiliary verbs, where I deal specifically with echo questions, question tags, because they are different, and the inversion that goes on there, because there's perhaps some more details you might want to learn. So I've got another video on that, but I just wanted to mention that we use inversion in those situations, but most people are familiar with all of those situations. Secondly, negatives. Now, many people are not familiar with the fact that to express surprise or shock or just emphasize that something has never happened, you say something like this. You say, at no time did you ask me for permission. Maybe you're a teacher and you're telling a child off. You're reprimanding them for going out of the room, going to the toilet without permission, and you say, at no time did you ask me for permission. We put did you. We invert them to emphasize the surprise, the shock, the horror that he didn't ask permission. And here are some more examples. Not once did he say thanks. We're emphasizing how ungrateful he was. And you notice you have to start with the negative element here. Not once, at no time, not only, under no circumstances. So we start with the negative element and then we invert the subject and all the auxiliary verb. I would add as well that it sounds quite formal and quite literary. You see it in a lot of writing, and it sounds good in a letter of complaint or something like that. If you're writing a letter of complaint for the exam, this kind of negative inversion will look good. But yeah, here's some more. We also very often see it with not only, but also. Not only was he rich, but also he was, and so we don't generally invert it here. Just got a little bit confused there. But not only was he rich, but also he was a nice guy, or something like that. But we do invert it just to emphasize, to put emphasis that not only was he rich, he was also a very pleasant person. Under no circumstances should he exercise. Maybe this is a doctor giving advice to a patient, and he's saying under no circumstances, he's emphasizing that this would be a terrible thing to do, so he shouldn't exercise under any circumstances. Under no circumstances should he exercise. Okay, so there are some negative inversions. In the third situation, it's similar to the negatives, because we are emphasizing, we're making stronger the point that something has never been seen before, or that it was little that you knew something. Let me explain. With these words, scarcely, hardly, seldom, rarely, never, no sooner, barely, little, only, again we're expressing surprise or shock. sometimes just surprised, like little did I know he was actually French, or so little did I know. We're inverting the auxiliary and the subject, and we're trying to emphasize that I didn't know that he was French at all. Yeah, it's making it stronger, and again it sounds literary and formal. No sooner had we arrived than dinner was served. Now this emphasizes that as soon as you arrived, they served dinner immediately after you arrived. So this happened first and then this happened second. But the no sooner and the inversion makes it really strong that it happened immediately after you arrived. Here we use never, and we say, never have I seen such a wonderful view. Sounds pretty formal, pretty literary, but you're expressing your shock at how wonderful this view is. So again, very similar to what I said about the negatives. A couple more examples. Only afterwards. Only can be used with these inversions as well. Only afterwards did I learn the truth. And you're saying only later. It wasn't until much later. And you're emphasizing that it was much later. Only much later did I learn the truth. Okay, so after only, we can often invert. And here, rarely has he seen her. This is a very simple example, but you're making it very, very strong, this word. It makes that word stronger. You're putting it in the first position, just like with the negatives, and it makes it stronger, more surprising, more shocking. Okay, a fourth situation when we do this subject auxiliary inversion, we invert these words in hypotheticals, and I mean second and third conditional. Second and third conditional deal with imaginary situations, and so you can say, if I were rich, I would, I don't know, buy a Ferrari. But you could also say, were we rich, we could buy a Ferrari. Okay? And it just, you invert it and you get rid of the if. So make sure you get rid of the if you're going to invert it. You don't need if. It carries that meaning in the inversion itself. So had he come, we could have, I don't know, we could have eaten, I don't know, had he come to the party, we could have invited his wife too. Something like that. So again, it's if he had come to the party, we could have invited his wife. It's the same as third conditional. Okay, so it's another time when we invert. I wrote up here an old form because I suddenly remembered an old nursery rhyme, and I think in the nursery rhymes and in some children's stories you often see these inversions because it's quite literary and it's expressing shock and surprise, and so you do see them. And I remember one of the fairy tales saying, be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. This is a very old form of inversion, and I love the be he or be he. It's actually saying, if he were alive or if he were dead, I would grind his bones to make my bread. And I suppose it's not really doing it in a second conditional, but more first conditional. If he is alive, I will grind his bones. But this is very old. I don't suggest you use that. It looks a bit funny to me too, and it would sound funny if you used he be or she be. Okay, 5 and 6. I don't have much space left, so I'm going to rub out some space over here. 5 and 6, so and neither. When you want to agree or disagree with somebody, somebody says something like, I love fish and chips, and you say, do you? So you invert your echo question, do you? And then you say, so do I. And so you don't say, so I do, like some of my students do. You say, so do I. So let me give you some more examples. If somebody says, I would like a cup of coffee, you could say, so would I. If somebody says, I can't swim, you might say, neither can I. If you can't swim, yeah, you might say, neither can I. So we make these inversions also when we agree or disagree with so and neither. And the last case, so and such, is actually very similar to case 2 and case 3, because again it expresses surprise and shock. I only looked at them later, and so I should have put them in earlier. So for example, It's normally put at the start of the sentence again as well, just like these ones, just like little did I know, no sooner had we arrived. So anxious was I, that I didn't say hello. So anxious was I that I didn't say hello. Okay, and another example would be, such a nice person was he that he gave me a lift to the airport. This just was he. It just makes it stronger. It means he was a really nice person. And so anxious was I. It means I was really anxious. So this inversion makes it stronger. It adds emphasis, surprise, shock. And it's a good thing to use. Why not? Make your language more colourful. It does sound formal. It does sound quite literary as well. But if you want to make your language more interesting, then please use this inversion more often. And certainly use this, because we do use it all the time, to agree and disagree. And yeah, in the hypotheticals, why not? And with these little negative adverbial expressions, please use them. They will improve your language. Thanks very much for watching. Please put any questions under the video that relate to this, and I'll see you all soon.